Welcome everyone. We are here for the Skyline Park workshop number 3. I'm just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to join and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, it's just after 5:30, so thank you again for being here. This webinar will be kicked off by Happy Haynes, Executive Director of Denver Parks and Recreation.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited to have you here for another Skyline Park workshop, and we have lots in store for you. I would like to start the evening with an important acknowledgement, and we thank the Denver City Council and the Denver Indian Commission for developing this land acknowledgement and for granting us permission to use it. Denver Parks and Recreation honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders, past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver. With the Skyline Park project, we continue to honor the responsibility to be good stewards of this open space. So we want to again welcome you. Thank you for being here. This is our third and final Skyline Park public workshop. And so we're looking forward to hearing from you, you will see the progress we've made and how we have incorporated your past input. And so we're very excited to have you here this evening. As many of you know, Denver Parks and Recreation has been engaged in an extensive year-long public engagement effort to understand what the Denver community would like to see for the future of Skyline Park. So thank you so much for your participation and interest in the Skyline Park project over the past year. Your input has formed the basis of the concept plan that we are so excited to share with you this evening. Skyline Park is truly unique in our Denver park system as the only public park within the central business district. We believe that this concept plan will create a future Skyline Park that is an authentic and contemporary expression of Denver's urban outdoor lifestyle. As Denver's front yard, we ask a lot of our downtown parks, and Skyline Park is no exception. This park will be destinations for visitors, a neighborhood park for those who live in downtown and surrounding neighborhood residents, a respite for workers downtown, and a vibrant public space to support a wide spectrum of programming from cultural events to outdoor recreation, and a resilient oasis providing shade and ecological benefits as well to our urban core. Most importantly, it will be a welcoming and accessible space for all people. As our city begins to recover and reopen following the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of our downtown parks has never been more important to the future of our city. We've seen evidence of this for the last year. Skyline Park has the opportunity to be a catalytic spark to help reinvigorate downtown public life. And we take on that challenge. So thank you again for being here today as we work together to finalize the Skyline Park draft concept plan. And now I'd like to turn it over to Gordon Robertson, who is the Director of Planning, Design, and Construction for Denver Parks and Recreation. Gordon.
Thank you, Happy. Thanks very much. And thanks to everyone for participating tonight. What we will be sharing with you tonight is the synthesis of the extensive engagement effort to understand Denver's hopes for the future design of Skyline Park. We are looking forward to hearing your thoughts about what you like and don't like about the final draft concept plan. Following today's workshop, our design team will compile your feedback along with the feedback we've received from the public input survey over the next month to create the final concept plan for all 3 blocks at Skyline Park. The final plan will be shared later this summer. We'd now like to take a moment to thank our partners without whom this project would not be possible. And we'll start with recognizing the voters who approved the Elevate Denver bond in 2017 that really kicked off this project. The funding has made this possible. We'd also like to thank Councilwoman Cita Baca and Council District 9, where this project resides. Her and her team's involvement in this process has been fantastic. We'd also like to thank Elevate Denver Bond Program for their support of the Skyline Park Improvement Project, the staff from the Elevate Denver Bond Program. And then lastly, we want to thank the Downtown Denver Partnership and Denver Theater District for their help in promoting this workshop. And we couldn't do it without the project team. I really am so glad to have been a part of this project team. It's one of the best teams I've been a part of in a long time. And of course, that starts with our fearless leader, Happy Haynes, who you just met, myself, Craig Coronado, who is a supervisor in our landscape architecture group in parks, and Jenna Harris, who's our project manager on this project. Also from our marketing communications, we have Laura and Jesus, who are helping us to run all of the public process. And then from the Rios, the consultant team Rios, we have Mark, Nate, and Christina, fantastic partners in this process and really great innovators and designers. We also have a historian from ERO, who's a sub-consultant, Abigail. Thank you for being on the team, very important. So this project team has been really fantastic in getting us to where we are today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jenna and we can get going.
Great, thanks, Gordon, and thank you all for being here. So the agenda for this evening will quickly walk you through the feedback opportunities and the ways that you can provide feedback on this webinar. We'll then walk you through the goals and context and community process that we've undergone over the last year. That'll lead us to the preferred concept plan, the really exciting part of this evening that we're very excited to share with you. And then we'll have an opportunity for both public comment and question and answer towards the end. And finally, we'll walk you through the next steps on this project. So thank you again for being here, and I'll hand it over now to Christina from Rios.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna, and welcome everyone. We have a couple housekeeping items before we dive into our presentation. So firstly, I wanted to start off to just explain some of the Zoom meeting controls for folks that haven't had the pleasure of being on a Zoom webinar just yet, or need a little refresher. So your camera and audio are automatically disabled, and the session is being recorded and will be made available on the Outdoor Downtown website after the webinar. You can interact with us in a couple ways. You can answer our open-ended prompts and questions using the chat button below. And then you can ask Q&A throughout the duration of the webinar. We'll be having a moment for Q&A at the end of the session. You can use the chat button to answer the open-ended questions, and we'll read back some of those responses that we collect. And please be aware, only panelists are going to be able to see those chat comments, but we're going to do our best, and Jenna's going to do her best to collect, to compile, and read back out to you. The Q&A button that you'll use to ask questions, please be aware that everyone will be able to see the Q&A and we'll address the questions near the end of the chat. You can ask the questions anonymously by hitting that little button right there. And you can upvote questions. So we'll make sure that we address the questions that have the most upvotes first. All right, let's get started with a quick kind of warm-up question just to get a sense of where you all are coming from. So I'm going to launch a poll here, just asking this really simple question. Where do you live? In the Denver metro area or outside of it? Thank you for answering so promptly. We've got almost 80% of the folks on the call have answered so far. I'll give you all a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. We've got most folks participating. I'm going to share the results. All right, it looks like 88% of y'all are from the Denver metro area and about 5 of you are coming from outside. Welcome, everybody. All right. So when we first began the Skyline Park reimagining process, we chose to build upon the outdoor downtown plan to identify our guiding vision statement and goals for the project. We have used these goals as touchstones to make decisions about the future of the park. And every step along the way, we've asked ourselves, is this decision advancing these goals? We know that different solutions will amplify the goals, some goals more than others, but generally overall, we seek to establish a nexus where we're trying to address all of these goals cohesively. For the future of Skyline to thrive, our first focus must be people. Who uses the park? How will the user base change over time? And who else can we bring to the park? From the outdoor downtown plan, we know Skyline Park currently serves the following spectrum of users: residents, employees, students, visitors. The map on the right shows this continued growth of office and hospitality and residential uses in the downtown, and that further amplifies the potential user base for the park. We believe that because of its central location in downtown and its tremendous proximity to transit infrastructure, that Skyline's really uniquely positioned to serve a broader user base that other parks in the central business district or near the central business district may not be positioned to serve. We also believe in the role that Skyline can play in fostering a more diverse audience. So while we're aware that most racial and ethnic diversity in Denver exists outside of the downtown, the best aspiration we can really have is to make Skyline a place where everyone feels like they belong and to make it this iconic experience that they can't get anywhere else. So to come to Skyline Park, this further flung audience needs a there and the access and accessibility that makes them want to take that trip. On a daily basis, we know that these folks from the farther flung areas are going to use their neighborhood parks for daily needs. And that wider user base is going to hopefully be drawn to the magnetic, more temporal experiences that we create at Skyline over time. For the future of Skyline to thrive, we also wanted to think about place and how downtown Denver sets the stage for Skyline's future. So we wanted to think about Skyline in the context of all the other great parks downtown, which serve this wide spectrum of desires, from the cultural events and festivals that happen at Civic Center to the River Trail and Active Rapids at Commons and Confluence, and the critical role that Sonny Lawson plays as the only park in the district with an active ball field. Even with this incredible mix of open spaces and Skyline's amazing position in the center of it all, there's still gaps in park offerings and park access in downtown. These orange fills on the right indicate areas outside of a 5-minute walk to a park. And through our planning and design process, we really asked ourselves, what's going to break that 5-minute walk barrier? What's going to draw people to Skyline And then what's missing from this amazing tapestry of open spaces you already have in downtown Denver? We know that as downtown Denver keeps growing, there's a shortage of spaces for multi-generational play, for outdoor exercise, for garden strolls, for landscaped areas of respite. And we believe one way to really take advantage of Skyline's central location is to offer those magnetic and iconic draws and differentiate it as one of the only parks in the heart of downtown that offers those experiences. When we began the design process, we also took care to think about holistically reading the site. So we wanted to understand what happened in this place through its multitude of historical layers, not just one necessarily. So our reading extended back to the hydrological and geological formations in the region, to the indigenous pre-colonial landscapes, and to Denver's reimagining during the City Beautiful movement, when the city really shifted from a boom town to a metropolis. In the 70s, Skyline Park was established around the DNF Tower as a catalyst after the clearances of urban renewal. And today we continue to make history. This effort to redesign Skyline Park is part of a really great downtown renaissance that's happening as more people move to and experience downtown. It's part of a broader suite of efforts underway, like the Outdoor Downtown Plan, like Denver Moves, like the 5280 Trail, like the reimagining and reconstruction of the 16th Street Mall. We want to think about ourselves as part of that context. Through our holistic reading of the site's history, we have also heard from the public and recognized the legacy of Halperin as an important aspect of Skyline Park. Influential American landscape architect Lawrence Halperin designed Skyline in the mid-1970s as a central feature of the urban renewal district that had been established in the 50s. And unique to Halperin's design was his selection of materials that really spoke to Colorado's rocky outcroppings and its redstone foothills. Another unique feature was his emphasis on geometric rectilinear forms. And then perhaps most importantly, his choreographed processional spaces that were meant to serve the daily needs of users at the time. While effective in many ways, as the years went on, Halperin's design raised concerns. The lack of flexibility for contemporary uses, the difficult sightlines, the inability to move freely from the building edge and the promenade to the street. And some of these issues were addressed through the 2000 era redesign led by landscape architect Thomas Balsley, the plan for which you see here. But many would argue that these improvements were really a compromise between the Halperin legacy and the contemporary needs of today. Because Balsley's redesign only addressed portions of the 3 blocks, the design ultimately interrupted the flow of the spaces and left disjointed remnants. As a result, historians and expert advisors on these changes have commented on the loss of integrity of the park as a work of an influential landscape designer. From the original design and through all the subsequent iterations and modifications, Skyline became a patchwork, and arguably no one stakeholder was really satisfied with the end result. And what we heard from you all through our public engagement process is a confirmation of these concerns regarding the patchwork. The park is fragmented, it's lacking access, it's lacking visibility, it's lacking connectivity within the blocks and across the blocks. And there's very serious concerns about safety and site security. The park is not living up to its full potential, and it's really lacking those amenities and experiences that could truly serve this broad audience that we have the goal to serve. So in order to make Skyline Park a welcoming, functioning, successful park, we concluded that the following design principles are what we call non-negotiables. They must underpin anything that we do programmatically and physically in the park. These will be familiar to you if you've joined us at any of the previous workshops. The first principle is that Skyline Park should be unified. Its urban figure extending from building face to building face, all the way from 15th Street to 18th Street. We envision a network of plazas and paths, lawns and plantings that together form this continuous fabric. And we believe that all circulation routes should be brought up to sidewalk level to allow for universal access and intuitive wayfinding. The second principle is that Skyline Park should be connected with its surrounding streetscapes and with its surrounding buildings. Its corners should be inviting, its edges should be transparent and activated. It should be a mobility hub. We should work with, we should think about the north edge of the park as a broad promenade and allow generous access to buildings while making space for cafe seating and retail displays, all to support these kinds of animations of ground floor uses. And we should work with adjacent property owners to open up into the park with more engaging lobbies and even perhaps outdoor workplace amenities. And lastly, connected to us means that we should expand the park into the adjacent streetscapes, especially Arapahoe, to dramatically improve the conditions for pedestrians and bicyclists. So what you see here on the right in green is our recommendation that we expand Skyline Park's footprint into Arapahoe Street by bringing the bike lane and its buffer into the park itself. We realize that these conversations, or we know that these conversations are gaining ground with Dottie and other agencies because we've been helping lead these conversations with the Parks Department, and we're very excited about this opportunity. Okay, and lastly, the third principle for the basis of design for Skyline Park should be that the park should offer a spectrum of experiences that attracts a diverse community. As I talked about previously, Skyline today and tomorrow needs to serve a range of audiences, from neighbors to students to residents in other neighborhoods to out-of-town guests, conventioneers, office workers, shoppers. And as we studied the three blocks, it became apparent that each of them had these unique features that made it more amenable to a particular mix of programs. So block 1 traditionally hosts large community gatherings. It's next to the 16th Street Mall. It has few trees and other structures on it because there's a garage underneath the first block. So we can amplify this gathering role by imagining ways to make it more of a draw with signature art, culture, and special events. Block 2 has hosted a beer garden and ice rink pop-ups that have been hugely successful. It's adjacent to the 16th Street Mall, and it has the most food and beverage adjacencies and opportunities. So if someone's going to spend time downtown, this is where they're going to get their vibrant social life when they drop in. And block 3 has been the least visited block. And with the recent addition of the dog park, it's finally bringing some sustained use. So this is where we believe we can satisfy some of the more daily needs of neighbors that don't necessarily have those backyards or those patios. Before we dig into the preferred concept plan, I know we're all waiting to see it. I do want to recognize and thank you all. You're our trusted community members, you are our stakeholders, and we value all of the time that you've spent with us so far. Over the last year, we counted over 1,486 participants from whom we collected really valuable insights about the future of the park. Whether you joined us through the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, or some of the focus groups that we had, or the 2 public workshops that we have already held, or the hundreds of online and paper surveys that we did, we thank you. It hasn't all been virtual. We have done intercept surveys in the park and have made a huge effort to team with community partners to push out those paper surveys. And shout out to our Rio sub-consultant team too, Kimberly Horn. Their office overlooks block 3 of Skyline. Our surveying team is local. Our engagement specialists, Two Forks Collective, are local, and it's just been a real joy to work with them. So your feedback in workshop 1 directly influenced the programming priorities we built into our concept options that we brought to workshop 2. You told us about the importance of the mix of social, cultural, recreational, connected, and sustainable elements that needed to drive the next era of Skyline. As part of workshop 2, we presented these 2 concept options for each block in order to test the degree to which you all wanted to see more active versus passive programs, more green versus more paved areas, more programmed versus more flexible spaces, and so on. A summary of our input is available online on the Outdoor Downtown website. And I'm going to share a brief recap of it today, block by block, because you're going to see, I hope, the connection that we made between your feedback on each block and the preferred concept plan. The feedback we got for block 1 included the importance of consistent activation and the support for public art and cultural and artistic programs. People were pretty split between a block 1 that emphasized expanded arts and culture through events and large performances, and small performances too, versus a block 1 that had a more ad hoc, flexible type of programming. The majority really saw a mixture of both. A common reflection across all 3 blocks that I have to share was that folks really wanted more gathering spaces, especially shaded gathering spaces. And they really emphasized those concerns about loitering, safety, and security in the park. For block 2, we asked the public if they preferred an interactive water plaza that could convert to an ice rink versus a more sinuous loop. Most folks preferred the loop idea. And we really frequently heard about the importance of interactive water play as important for all ages and all audiences. There was also consistent support for permanent food and beverage offerings on block 2, with a preference for more landscape integrated structures and kiosks. Audiences recognized the importance of the DNF Tower as an orienting feature in the park, and also the importance of the block 2 Halperin Fountain. For block 3, a majority of stakeholders wanted to see more active uses in the park. People mentioned the need for sports courts, a dog park, fitness and play areas. Community members recognize that this is the most challenging block to get people out to, and they really lifted up these family-friendly, active play elements as a way to draw people there. So we are so excited to show you how your feedback manifested into a draft final concept plan for all 3 blocks. And I'm going to kick it over to Nate to do that.
All right. Thank you, Christina. So as you heard, we have a very clear basis of design and all of this fantastic input from you and other stakeholders about what experiences Denver wants to have at Skyline Park. What we need next is a physical form that can fulfill these principles and accommodate the range of activities desired. Next. As we engaged all of these stakeholders over the past year around an important question of what Denver's urban outdoor lifestyle means to them, it became clear that there's not one answer, but that together diverse answers could form a rich tapestry of experience that enlivens Skyline Park throughout the day and through the seasons. Some are going to come to Skyline for their daily recreation, others for a festival or special event, and some folks just want to, watch people or grab a snack. We envision all of the surfaces and spaces of the park as a collective canvas on which the communities of Denver can express themselves. And we look forward to engaging local Denver artists and artisans, materials and manufacturers as the design progresses to help make it uniquely Denver. As we worked to weave together all of these various objectives, a physical strategy emerged of Skyline Park as an artful fabric with a warp and a weft. The block-to-block warp is made of flowing ribbons of shade trees and green infrastructure and pollinator gardens. The perpendicular weft connects the park up into its adjacent buildings and stretches the park across Arapahoe to the southeast side. This fabric can then be pushed and pulled to shape the central activity and gathering spaces on each block, as well as what we're calling the shaded shoulder gardens along both edges throughout the park. As our preferred concept design comes into focus, you can see how this flexible fabric creates a rhythm of compression and expansion as one moves through the park. It establishes a pulse that pulls visitors off of the 16th Street Mall and encourages them to engage all 3 blocks of Skyline Park, offering new vistas and focal points along the way. We're going to speak later specifically to how our design engages the elements of the original design, but this intention to establish a new urban choreography and to restore a sense of flow to Skyline Park is one of the ways that we intend to honor the Halperin legacy. And more than just specific to Denver, what we're proposing is a design that is customized to this specific site. It's knit into the 16th Street Mall. It flows around the DNF Tower and other park features. It aligns to adjacent building entries and streetscapes. And like a tailored suit, this is a design that could only be built in this precise location and in response to Skyline Park's unique history. So let's look at all three park blocks together for a moment and recognize the ways that we were fulfilling the three principles of the basis of design. Our main circulation along the building faces and throughout the blocks has all been brought up to the surrounding sidewalk elevation to allow easy access, circulation, and wayfinding. And then park plantings and textures stretch across all three blocks in order to unify the park. In terms of connectivity, park activity spaces and openings in those shaded shoulder gardens have been coordinated. You'll see different gaps and things aligned with building entries and opportunities for cafe seating along the retail frontages. The bike lane on Arapahoe has been brought up into the park, and then park materials are carried across the roadway to better integrate the park and the street. And finally, each block contributes to that spectrum of experiences to attract diverse audiences, with block 1 being flexible for community events, art exhibitions, and cultural programming. Block 2 being a downtown social hub with interactive water feature, skating, food and beverage, and gathering. And block 3 satisfying the daily needs of downtown residents with sports courts, fitness and play features, and a dog park. So now let's take a closer look at each of the blocks. All three blocks share a basic structure of a promenade, original to the Halperin design, along the building frontages, and then what we call those shaded shoulder gardens on either side of the block that frame the main park spaces. And then along Arapahoe, you see that sometimes there are eddies that pulse into the park in order to encourage people to leave the street, to get off the sidewalk or get off the bike lane and really draw people into the park. And then you see that the park itself, the park-like qualities are carried all the way to the southeast side of Arapahoe, really extending from building face to achieve that urban figure that Christina spoke of. So block 1 has 3 major areas. On the left, you see an event lawn with a pavilion. And then at the Narrows, you see an outdoor work lounge. And that Narrows is required because of the ramp, which rises up out of the subsurface garage to exit. And then finally, an art plaza framed by shaded swings, which we'll show you along the 16th Street Mall. Let's look first at the event lawn. This is going to accommodate festivals and gatherings of up to 1,500 people, as well as more regular daily events such as lunchtimes, jazz, and other performances. So this pavilion acts as a shade structure for daily use, and it becomes a band shell for more significant event use. Our outdoor work lounge adapts the park's existing restroom and retail building to include a shade structure and amenities to support office users that want to work from the park. So it'll have internet and power. Within that shade structure, we can build in heat and fans to extend the seasons. And we could include a small coffee shop and other food and beverage on the block. And then finally, the Art Plaza hosts rotating installations, markets and fairs and exhibitions. And when there's not a special use happening there, the ground itself can be animated with a light installation or projections that interact with the users in those surrounding swings. So what we want to do now is take a couple of eye-level views. So this is a view from 15th Street through the event lawn pavilion to the DNF Tower beyond. And this offers that shaded destination for midday performances and then becomes the main stage for large events at Skyline Park. When you see that gradient of color in any of these representations, it's a suggestion of a potential digital display in the park. So this could be a surface for outdoor movies and simulcasts of cultural events happening around town, video art by community artists, and other digital content in the park that'll form a really intriguing lighting effect into the evening, extending the hours of use at Skyline Park. So this is then a view from the other end of the block, from 16th Street Mall, looking across the Art Plaza to the Work Lounge with those shaded swings on the left, and then that interactive light art happening on the ground. And we hope that the art installations that would take place here could have a dialogue with the season. So maybe In the summer, you engage emerging artists and designers around, competitions for shade canopies. And in the winter, it could be a great canvas for snow and ice sculpture. Moving on to, Christina, do you want to explain this? Or I'll do it. So feel free to leave comments, which we'll pick up. We want to just remind you to be dropping us comments along the way. And then we'll discuss all of this and answer your questions once we get through all 3 blocks. So moving on to block 2. We again have 3 major areas. On the left is an interactive water feature next to the DNF Tower, which becomes our skating rink in the winter. And then at the Narrows, we have a bridge structure with kiosks below in front of the Westin Hotel. And then along 17th Street, we have what we're calling the Gathering Grove. The water feature will have dynamic programming of water and light. Another fantastic team member, Fluidity, is really world's premier water feature designer, and really who we turn to for our most significant urban public spaces. And so they'll be looking at this with us as we move into more detailed design. But the water, the light, potential music, and other performances, it can be turned off to be an event space as well. And then in the winter, it's a skating rink. And again, another potential surface for projection. So imagine the skaters themselves becoming part of the performance. So then we have our bridge structure. This is something that allows you to get an elevated view of the skaters or the water feature or the Gathering Grove, or long views to the DNF Tower and the rest of downtown. And beneath the elevated portion of the bridge structure, there are kiosks for food and beverage service, restrooms, skate rentals, and other park needs. And we're also going to be studying the possibility that that skating rink becomes a loop, passes under the bridge, winds through the grove, and then returns to the rink to create a unique skating experience in Skyline Park. And then finally, the Gathering Grove offers generous spaces to enjoy food and beverage in a beer garden setting with fire lounges and shade trees. So we'll get another couple of eye-level views. So this is a view across the water feature from, imagine you're standing at the DNF Tower and looking back towards our bridge structure. And you can see that the bridge has amphitheater seat steps working their way up, and then a shade canopy. So we want there to be lots of spaces to hang out and overlook the park above the action. And there's also another opportunity here to integrate a digital display. So wrapping art and color and light over the water and ice, imagining the kind of seasonal atmosphere and reflections, and really creating a dynamic park setting. And then this is a view from the Gathering Grove back towards that bridge structure. So this is where we imagine all of us getting together for a drink from one of the kiosks, or hanging out with family and friends under the shade trees to watch a sporting event on some of the big screens. And in the winter, get your hot chocolate and warm up by one of the fire lounges in between your skating sessions. Another opportunity reminder to leave us some comments, and we'll move on to block 3. So block 3 is where we have a wide variety of possible active uses supporting the daily park needs of downtown residents. You can think of this as an outdoor extension of the 20th Street Rec Center with basketball and pickleball and other active uses. And it's also a great spot for fitness areas and play elements. And we also see a third food and beverage opportunity, just a small kiosk for snacks and beverages, coffee. And of course, with the success of the interim dog park, that's something we think could return to block 3. And last, there are some of the images of those elements. And then last, but certainly not least, an idea we want to share with you is recontextualizing the most significant of the remaining Halperin elements, the block 2 fountain, as a significant sculpture raised up to grade and reimagined, shrouded in mist, and with interactive light art to provide new dynamic ways of experiencing this significant work. We're really trying to make this an attraction that draws people across 17th Street to explore the 3rd block of Skyline Park. But we should acknowledge that we've been in discussion with a number of stakeholders about could a similar treatment be explored in its current location on block 2. So we're looking at that idea on block 3 or on block 2. So now a couple of views. This is a view from 17th Street of that repositioned Halperin sculpture. You can also get a glimpse of our shaded shoulder gardens and ribbons of pollinator and rain gardens. We'll definitely be looking to naturally treat stormwater on site and create new urban habitat along all 3 blocks. And then this is a view from the central sports courts back towards that Halperin sculpture. And in some cases, those shaded shoulders can become more structured and terraced in order to support fitness and play activities. All right, so we know this is a lot of new material to take in, and it's really a dramatic vision of change for Skyline Park. So we're happy to be with you to take questions and comments and gather your input to help us refine this preferred concept for Skyline Park.
Great, thanks, Nate. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the comments as they're coming in. I'll start with block 1 and block 2. I think we're still getting comments on block 3. So first, I'll start with block 1. We have a comment from Charles, who feels that elevating the stage area might help make it more visible for performances. Thomas has another great comment. Thomas likes the combination of even more event-driven uses with options for more daily uses in block 1. So likes the combination of the 2. Donna says block 1 really needs a small dog park area near Brooks Tower and the new pet supply store. Thanks, Donna. We've actually heard that quite a bit. Let's see, we have a couple of park-wide comments. One is that shade is absolutely critical to the success of the park. We also have more of an anecdotal story from Rayanne, who said that the dog park is very popular, and just this morning was there and met families from out of town. They came to watch the dogs play, and they thought it was really great to have such an urban dog park. Rayanne says that she is very excited for this project. We have another park-wide comment from Gretchen that Gretchen is not really feeling a real visual or aesthetic relationship to Denver or our history. It's great, but could be anywhere cool. Jumping to block 2, I have a comment from Mary. Mary says the fire lounges are really nice. Also loving all of the trees, really breaks up the hardscape. I have another comment on block 2 from Rebecca. Rebecca loves the outdoor big screens in 2 areas and thinks that that is really great. Thomas also has a comment on block 2. The bridge element of block 2 creates a layering of experiences and keeps the whole experience from happening mostly on a flat plane. We have another comment specifically about the bridge feature. John mentions that he's concerned about the impact of the bridge on sightlines in the park. All right, I'm gonna switch over to my other screen to grab comments for block 3. We've got a lot of comments coming in, so thank you so much. Let me pull this up. We have a comment from Andrew, who thinks that outdoor sports spaces should be flexible and multi-use. Pickleball, bocce, basketball may have a limited numbers for now and over time. There is a comment specifically about the connection to the north block. If there's not a great connection, that block will ultimately fail. There's another comment from Mary. Mary would be interested in adding a hand wash stations or water fountains in addition to the restroom. This would make a great lunch break spot for workers and others downtown. Another comment about block 3. Block 3 still seems to be left alone. The sports and dog areas will attract only a fraction of the population, and there's no ongoing draw like ground floor business or restaurants on block 3 specifically. And the dog park draws kind of the same dog community downtown. We have a lot of comments about people loving the food and drink kiosks on each block. We have a specific comment for Marissa on that. We have a comment from Dick, who likes the reimagining of the Halperin Fountain on Block 3. Mist may not be enough to make it a cooling attraction, but we could consider interactive water. Great, I think that is all of the comments that I have at this time, but please do make sure to keep them coming. We will be recording all of the comments that we get in the chat. And please also put your questions in the Q&A. And it looks like while I was reading comments, we already have a number of questions. So Nate and Christine, are we heading to Q&A now?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Great.
I don't think I can see that, so you'll just sort of spring them on us.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking in the wrong spot.
All right, so our first question, so for all of our panelists, you can go ahead and turn your video camera back on because I will be directing the questions at you. So first question we have is from Andrew. Andrew thought the bike lane was going to be more integrated into the park space. The renderings look like the trees are planted inside the bike lane rather than protecting the bike lane by separating it from car traffic. Andrew, that's a great question and one we've been exploring quite a bit in depth. So I'm going to pass that to Nate to talk a little bit more about the configuration of the bike lane.
We brought both sections to a series of workshops with Dottie and other stakeholders, and one version, which just what you described, where you put the tree lawn or green infrastructure between the roadway and the bike lane, and this version, which is going to be grade separated, so there'd be a curb between the roadway and the bike lane. So this is similar to what you have on Brighton in Denver, and this was the preference from the city in order to make sure that the folks who want to be able to more quickly bike through downtown, that this as a mobility, as a transportation facility is prioritized. But what we did do as a way to acknowledge that some folks, hopefully we can lure them into the park off of the bike lane. So you see these generous gaps at our on each of the blocks where we allow people to get off the bike lane and either bike slowly or walk your bike as you move into the park. And so it's a kind of braided ability to move in and out of the park if you're doing the bike version of strolling. But for folks who want to be able to just continue on that bike lane, it is adjacent to the roadway. Grade separated.
Great, thanks, Nate. We have another question about the connections across 16th and 17th to increase the flow across all 3 blocks. While we're talking about mobility and pedestrian connections, do you want to answer that as well?
Sure. So we are indicating that the materiality of the park would continue across 17th. 16th, of course, is being rebuilt. And so that will be with the materials of 16th Street Mall. But what you're seeing is we're actually thinking that this fabric we've described could be integrated with the diamondback pattern of the 16th Street Mall. So as their diamonds resolve, that we can sort of pull our threads out off of that geometry as a way of acknowledging the integration of these 2 important spaces. As we move on to 17th, we would carry our fabric across the street. Probably we would use a much more, conventional concrete panel type material that can withstand buses and fire trucks and all of that stuff. But in order to express the park as really continuous across these roadways. And we are exploring with Dottie the idea of a mid-block crossing on 17th, because there are a lot of pedestrians who move along the face of those buildings and make that crossing. And so that is in discussion. It's going to require a lot more study of, how far back cars will back up into the next intersection and so forth. But as a concept, we're showing the crosswalk at 17th as well as a mid-block crossing. So those are the approaches to 16th Street Mall and 17th Street. And then we are not showing any mid-block crossings on Arapahoe. We're recommending pedestrians cross at the intersections when crossing Arapahoe. But there is the opportunity, we have been in discussions about being able to flexibly, for event and festival use, close Arapahoe and use that as part of the larger park experience. So whether that's a farmer's market or a festival or music, that we could use that surface as part of the larger public realm.
Great, thanks, Nate. We have a question about the existing artwork in Block 1. Will it be removed? And I'll direct that to Christina.
Thanks, Jenna. We're going to look at ways to reposition the existing artwork in place where it exists on Block 1 as well as Block 3. There's a piece there as well. There's a historic plaque, I believe, on Block 1 that we're going to look at ways to retain. And another feature that Nate might have hinted at is that there's a historical Vedica sign that's quite beautiful on the outermost edge of Block 1 that's facing 15th Street that we're going to look at integrating into that phase of the design as well.
We glossed over a lot of the smaller details, but on that plan, that little red circle in the lower left corner of Block 1, that is the approximate location of that art piece, and it does relate to a tragic accident that happened at that intersection. So we do understand that keeping that in its current location is important.
Great, thanks, Nate and Christina. The next question is from Bill. I'm going to direct this question at Craig. The question is about whether or not the dog park will have a fence so that dogs can be let off leash.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I saw a number of other questions in the chat about the potential for fencing of areas within Block 3 in particular. As much as fencing blocks things off, we think it could be integrated into the landscape and the design in such a way it sort of disappears. I agree that for an off-leash dog park, you're going to need some sort of enclosure. And it's more of a design detail and how that's integrated into the landscape and how it doesn't create a barrier for people using the park. I think that also applies to the potential of fencing the basketball court, the pickleball courts, and so on. They'd have to be fairly unobtrusive.
Great. And while we're on the dog park, we have one more question about is the current or the proposed dog park as big as the current dog park? It would be good for it to be larger since at times there are quite a few dogs in the park. And I'll direct that at Nate.
It's approximately the same size. We might be a hair smaller. We haven't seen it overloaded with dogs so far, but certainly as part of the refinements to Block 3, that could be studied if there is really a strong sentiment from stakeholders that, and maybe as the use of it grows in the coming years, we can study the amount of space devoted to that. We're showing a lot of things on Block 3, and it's really just to show that range of responsiveness to the daily needs. Block 2 is what's going to get built in the near term, and I think we'll learn things as that's coming together, and the priorities for Block 3 are certainly something we're listening to you on and can be flexible if there really is more significant need for one of those types of uses.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question is about the Halperin water feature. The question is whether or not it's being relocated. Nate, will you take that one as well?
Sure. So what we're showing is the Block 2 fountain, which based on our assessment by our historical consultant and feedback from stakeholders is the most significant of the remaining Halperin elements. We are showing it crossing the street in addition to being raised up to grade. And as I mentioned during the presentation, following this meeting, we'll also study whether we could do something similar in its current location, raised to grade. Just to speak a little bit to the nuance of what's happening there, the original Halperin design and really the genius of his work was his relationship of spaces and the way people move through space. He was married to an equally, as famous as he was as a landscape architect, he was married to a dancer and choreographer, Anne Halperin, who really, I think the two of them learned from each other, and that sense of how you move through space was critical to the original Halperin design and much of his work. And the way you would arrive at that water feature was actually through a linear procession coming from the DNF tower through a channel, a kind of metaphorical creek channel to arrive there. And with the 2000s design, that flow was interrupted. There's now that hill there, and really the water feature remains in a sunken terrace about 5 feet below the surrounding grade. And you probably heard various concerns have been raised about accessibility to that and ways that people are using that sunken space. The Parks Department has it fenced off much of the time because of the challenges with taking care of it. And so in order to bring it back into the flow and to offer this new vantage point from what we call the bridge, but to really bring it back into this sense of moving through spaces inspired by that choreography that Halperin, really brought to landscape architecture. Our recommendation is to bring it up, and that by doing that, now people can engage it in new ways, and it can be now the rest of the circulation of the park isn't interrupted by it. There's lots more flexible use of that space by having it, not having all of the surrounding area 5 feet below grade. But we recognize that it's a really incredibly significant piece and has some integrity in its own right, even if much of the rest of the park has been removed. And so we're really trying to find a way to make it an asset for the future park. Just like the DNF tower represents a certain era, we want to hold on to the best of the original park as another element, and really see this fabric we're describing as reflecting a weave of multiple generations and eras of Denver.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question I'm going to direct at Gordon. This question came from Marissa, and the question is about the sports and other related games and draws in the various blocks. Would there be an opportunity for people to check out equipment like bocce balls, tennis, table tennis rackets, basketballs, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. It will absolutely get more used if we have that. And I totally agree that I'm hoping that the structure in the middle of block 2, which will have some food and beverage, but also some office space and storage space, that's an area that we could, at a minimum, that would be hopefully designed into that building, that we would have equipment to check out. So that is something we did talk about, and I totally agree with you that that's something we will try to do.
Great, thanks, Gordon. I'm going to direct the next one back at you. There's a question from Dick about, can the coffee, snacks, lunch kiosks be kept active throughout the year and throughout the day?
Our goal is to have a 12-month year-round park. It's sometimes hard to do, but our weather is pretty nice in the winter. And so the fire lounges are a nod to that. And certainly the food and beverage options should include things that would be of interest in the winter and shoulder season as well. The summer is going to be a hit no matter what. So our goal is to make this a year-round park. And I think having the food and beverage at some level, maybe not quite the summer level food and beverage, but keeping some kiosks going throughout the year will be definitely a part of the plan.
Great, thanks, Gordon. The next question is from Will. Will has a question about bathrooms on block 3. Craig, I'm wondering if you could answer that question and talk a little bit more about the proposed plan for restrooms in the park.
Yeah, we are keeping the ones in block 1. Block 2 has the opportunity in the new building to provide some additional restrooms. We can look at and consider them for block 3. Right now, the kiosk is the structure we have there now. We'd have to evaluate it in terms of both, what our park standards are for providing restrooms, and also what this block ends up being, and who the adjacent user is too. There may be opportunities to work with the future adjacent tenant of the Chase building, which I understand is changing hands, to utilize those facilities as well. We don't want to occupy too much of the block with buildings.
Great, thanks, Craig. The next question is from Ted. How will the light, art, and digital display be controlled to maintain good ambient level without bright light that is harsh and compromises seeing the night sky? I'll direct that question to Nate.
That's a hard one. It is a downtown location, and it's already surrounded by large digital displays and what's called the People's Projector, which projects onto the DNF tower And so we really are trying to build on that level of excitement for this hyper urban park setting. I think as we move forward in dialogue about the precise, orientation, making sure we're not shining light up and, shielding it in different ways will all be part of the discussion. One of our great lighting design partners, HLB, is on the team to study that. But I think we do need to acknowledge that the priority here is a much more vibrant, active park, as opposed to necessarily, this wouldn't be the place you would go to see clear, starry skies. Colorado has lots and lots of places to go to do that. So I think we're really looking at this as a place where dynamic lighting at night is part of the experience that encourages people to spend more time there. And Gordon, Greg, Jen, if there are park policies that maybe would also, I don't know if you have certain hours or light levels and things, we will learn all of those and we will be considerate of it. But I think the bias really is towards more of a cultural expression in this setting.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question is from Gretchen. The question is, could there be some vertical elements that pull you off the shuttle onto 16th, or that you might see from Union Station to draw visitors down there? Nate, I'll pass that back to you. Oh, Nate, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, great point. I mean, the visual sequence of spaces is part of that choreography. And so we made a lot of decisions like putting the water feature close to the DNF tower, thinking that's our best chance. If someone was passing, we know that 16th Street Mall is the majority of our pedestrian traffic that we might draw into the park. And so thinking about how do we make sure the noise and the sound and the excitement of a feature like that is part of what's going to pull them in. And then how does this kind of compression and expansion and focal points, how do we use those to draw people like breadcrumbs all the way deep into all of the block? So that is certainly a part of the thinking about where certain elements are located, but also just pragmatically, the most intensively used spaces for special events and things want to be concentrated near the mall as well.
I might add to that I think the move of narrowing Arapahoe Street and widening the area between the DNF tower and the actual curb and street, right now the problem you've identified is people walk by it and don't even know that the park is there. Yeah. That's going to create a very welcoming corner and much better visual access into at least block 2 and block 3 as well.
There are some topographic challenges there in light of that parcel not being owned, as part of the park. So we hope that part of the development of block 2 is a collaboration with the ownership there. Are there material continuities or some grading that we could do in order to unify those zones a little better? Because in addition to visual challenges, there are just some physical obstructions getting between the mall and into the park.
Great. The next question is from Charles. I'm going to pass this question to Gordon. How will these park elements be paid for? Are they all under the bond, or are you looking for individual partnerships and funding efforts for the specific elements of the park?
Great question, and a long one. Yeah, so the Elevate Denver bond did fund the initial dollars that got the planning and design underway. There will be some dollars left directed at block number 2 for construction. The Denver Parks and Recreation Department has set aside dollars, I believe, in 2023 for some additional construction dollars. We think that will not be enough to complete block 2. So there is some fundraising that we hope to do with the Denver community. We also are applying for some of the federal stimulus funding. So there's a number of different avenues we're researching for funding. We will not let funding get in the way to redoing block 2 on time. But we are looking at all angles to raise dollars. And then blocks 1 and 3, we'll set our sights on designing those and getting good cost estimates, and then doing those at a near future date, we hope.
Great, thanks, Gordon. This question I'll pass to Christina. This is from Mary. Are you considering flush curbs as you move through the corridor from 16th to 18th? Might be a very nice flow if possible.
Thanks, Mary, for that question. We've done our best to create a sense of compression and expansion that really draws you as much as possible from block 1, 2, 3 to 2, and 2, 3. We recognize that the 16th Street Mall is already flush with blocks 1 and 2. So we want to kind of continue to build on that. Nate talked a little bit about how we're trying to extend at least some semblance of the paving typology or scoring marks that kind of starts to transition into the character of Skyline Park for these 2 blocks. For the transition from block 2 to 3, that's a little bit more challenging. Nate talked a little bit about drawing the pavement typology or the scoring or maybe some sort of semblance of the park materiality across the street itself. And we're continuing to discuss with our Dottie partners what can be done right now. The 17th Street is a really active street. There's bus connections there. There's a bike lane there, or a bike connection there. There's active parking on either side of the street. So how do we make that a kind of an active and inviting mobility hub while also encouraging people to cross here? We're still really studying that and talking to our partners at Dottie. Maybe the city can speak a little bit more about that too.
Yeah, I think a devil's going to be in the details here, especially along Arapahoe Street. Dottie's been very open to and accepting of traffic calming measures, but not quite as far as doing sort of a shared street type of design per the current complete streets guidelines, where you eliminate the curbs altogether. There are concerns about storm drainage primarily, and utilities, and some traffic control issues that we'll have to work through. But we're going to work as hard as we can to make this as pedestrian and bike friendly as possible.
To that end, I don't know if we mentioned it already, but we are setting up that roadway so that in the future, per the Denver Moves plan, it could become a 2-way street, which will really help to slow traffic and make it part of a healthy pedestrian realm.
And connected all the way up to the 20th Street Rec Center, to the 5280 loop, to Cherry Creek. So it's a part of a larger system that we're in discussions with both planning and Dottie on.
Great. Next question I'll pass to Craig. Which existing trees will be removed or preserved in this scheme?
Thanks for asking that. And I saw John had raised his hand a couple times on that. So yes, we don't know exactly. I mean, this is a concept plan, but our feeling is that most of the trees along Arapahoe Street will be preserved, and those are some of the more mature deciduous trees that are along that stretch. And within the park, a lot of the trees are challenged there with the removal of the mound and the pine trees on it in block 2. Those would obviously have to go. I think our bias here with replacing trees is to get more deciduous trees that have seasonal interest, that don't have canopies in the winter when you need the heat, and they have plenty of big canopies that provide shade in the summer when it does get real hot out there. And to the question of root zone volume and being able to support mature trees in this area, I think when this park was built, they were still building a lot of 5x5 boxes. We're looking to the 16th Street Mall details using silvacells or something similar to that to both provide a much bigger soil volume so the trees can grow to their full maturity, but also provide some water quality and stormwater detention as part of that.
Great, thanks, Craig. The next question is from Charles, and it's primarily about block 3. It looks like Charles has 2 questions. I'll pass this to Nate. Have you considered putting any calisthenic elements, bar structures for block 3? Being a midday break spot, individual fitness elements like this would be great for a midday workout. In addition, there could be bouldering elements. Most people don't drive to gyms into the foothills or down south to climb, which feels like a missed opportunity to provide that level of activity within Denver parks.
All right, yeah, Charles, don't worry. We're gonna have lots of fitness on block 3. So, and for folks who don't know, Charles and his colleagues have been some of the active parkour users of Skyline Park, and so especially the block 2 fountain. So that is a potential overlay of use that could continue on that element. But we are in those blue zones where we describe these fitness terraces. You know, we haven't designed what bars and exact features or anything at this point, but we recognize that as part of the suite of experiences that people want as part of an active uses in the park. So we will, at the appropriate time, engage stakeholders with detailed knowledge of which types of fitness and boot camps and all the different ways that those spaces can be as flexible and as useful as possible.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question is from Vince. I'll pass this question to Gordon. Along with the LMD, Skyline, the LMD and Skyline, are there other significant funding sources being planned that can be dedicated to maintenance? In-grade lighting has also proven to be expensive and difficult to keep operational along 14th Street at the Wine Coupe Plaza Fountain.
Yeah, we will do everything in our design, right, Nate, to make this as maintenance light as possible, but it won't be light maintenance by any means. It's a very urban, very exciting design. So you're correct to think about extra maintenance. The LMD is not a small matter. It's a significant amount of resources directed at this park. And so that is a huge opportunity. We also, would hope that additional ranger, we have grown our ranger program. They spend a fair amount of time already at Skyline, but having a more directed presence would be another area that we would want to consider. And then lastly, a higher level of maintenance from the department, in addition to the LMD, is something that we have always looked at. And with this new park, is something that we'll have to relook at as well. So those are all on the table. There's no active planning right now. We're a little ways out, but those are things that we're thinking about. Absolutely.
Thanks, Gordon. The next question is from Karen. Karen would like to know how the plantings will be accommodated so that trees and plants actually thrive rather than barely survive, as is the current situation with a lot of trees and plantings downtown. Craig touched on this a little bit as it related to the tree plantings, but I'll pass this question to Nate.
Sure. So, part of it is going to be establishing appropriate soil volumes, as Craig spoke about. We're also going to be working closely with Parks horticulture staff in order to make sure that the plantings are things that they can absolutely take care of. We alluded to the role that these gardens are going to have to play as part of an overall green infrastructure strategy. So there will be many of those green areas, and the green areas may have to grow in order to satisfy the amount of stormwater treatment that's required when the engineering of all that is developed. So that is definitely an important part of making sure it's a thriving urban environment is working closely with the maintenance staff, the horticulturalists, our local consultants, our soil scientists. That's a part and parcel of work in these challenging urban settings. You're not wrong that a lot of places get really beat up, and Denver's climate, hot in the summer, and snow and salt and all the things that go with it it is not an easy landscape to take care of. So we're aware of that, and we're working closely with the whole team to come up with a solution that's durable.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question will go to Christina. The question's from Lauren, and the question's really about events and tents. About how many tents do you think we could accommodate on block 1 and 2? It seems like we have some curves and some trees, but Lorian's interested in learning more about where we can host events in Skyline Park.
I'm gonna pull out my scale right now. So one thing that we thought about when we were doing the concept design for block 1 is ensuring that we have enough of this DG and hard surface area along the shoulders. So between the shaded shoulders, as we call them, and the more lawn area, in order to be able to set up those tents. And we haven't counted exactly how many, but there's quite a few. I think Nate talked about how this lawn itself could also accommodate about 1,500 kind of concert goers or event goers. So that's kind of one of the places where we envision things like Kris Kringle or events like Kris Kringle happening. I noticed that there was a question about, is Kris Kringle going to stay here? And I think it's been in Civic Center Park most recently, and it might transition over there over time because it's kind of just growing so much. So perhaps this space might not be the largest of event spaces, but we have set it up in a way where it won't, for example, destroy the turf. And there'll be places to set up tents that is not necessarily directly on the turf. I will add also that we've thought about this plaza here, the Art Plaza on the 16th Street side of Block 1, and the water feature itself as two other kind of moderately sized event spaces where if there's not a art installation, this is kind of like a placeholder art installation that's interactive right now. If it's not there, this is another place where you could have that kind of tent set up, and that could accommodate quite a few. And also if the interactive water feature is turned off and it's not an ice rink in the winter, there could be ways to use that as an event space as well.
Great, thanks, Christina. The next question is from Ted, and I'll pass this question to Nate. Are there any historical signage locations? Ted's thinking about Indy's Heritage Trail, planned to tell the history of Denver's growth and the earlier Central Business District history.
There's definitely the opportunity to integrate interpretation in the more developed park design. I think as a theme, we do want to have key elements, and certainly, for example, the Halperin piece, if that's a focal point, we're going to want some information about that era, the DNF Tower, some of the other history that happened nearby, but we're not really trying to treat it as a historical museum of Denver. We're really recognizing it as a contemporary canvas, a place for all of diverse future Denver to be able to, put on performances, really a lot of different types of events and ways of using the space, as opposed to saying this is the destination for that kind of primarily interpretive about the past.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question's from Debbie, and I'll pass this to Craig as our resident dog park expert on the call. Can there be a small dog and large dog separation in the dog park? And can there be something other than dirt in the dog park? Maybe like pea or hay or pea rock, etc.
Yes, we recently at Parks just completed a dog master plan for the city, which established some design guidelines that we're adhering to. This is a unique site, being so urban and space limited. So we certainly could consider separate areas for different sized dogs. We also are not showing it on this plan, but in Block 1, we have a small area designated that could serve as a dog park, so folks don't need to walk all the way to Block 3. As far as the materials on the ground, the more urban it is, the more hardy they have to be, obviously. We've tried things like synthetic turf, and dirt is certainly not ideal. So yes, we'll explore, what the best practices are when this actually gets the final design and construction.
Great, thanks, Craig. The next question is about camping in the park. Will there be something to stop camping in the park? I'll pass that question to Gordon.
Where is Scott Gilmore when you need him? Camping in the park. Our park hours are early in the morning to, I believe here it's 11 o'clock at night, 6 a.m. to 11. We do have a dedicated ranger program that goes in after 11 at night, throughout the night, to make sure people are not camping in our parks. We do that at Civic Center. I believe we do it at Skyline. And so it is a program that we activate. And so you would not see that. If folks, have their belongings spread out in a manner that isn't a park use, we do encourage them to move on and to keep their belongings in a neat space. So I wouldn't say that we allow camping, but we certainly allow picnicking and allow people to relax, and anyone and everyone's allowed to do that in a park. So I think we have it covered. And I think we have a great evening program that makes sure that that doesn't happen overnight.
Great, thanks, Gordon. All right, we have reached the very last question, and it's perfect timing because we're running out of time. The last question is from Marissa, and the question is whether or not there is less green or more green with the new design concept compared to what currently exists. And I'll leave Nate with that question.
Definitely more shade trees. I think probably we can do more to green up the ground plane. We've really tried to emphasize all of these the flexibility, the event uses, a lot of porosity, overcoming some of the circulation challenges. And so a lot of the surfaces are very usable, which means, it's some form of hardscape is what's represented here. And we really concentrated the green in those ribbons that frame all of the gathering spaces. But I think as the design evolves, we'll look at what's the right dimension of those green zones so that we're providing a mix of both the green infrastructure and pollinator gardens and shade and all of the green respite with these desires for a very intensively used and flexible Skyline Park.
Great. Thank you so much, Nate. And thanks to all of you for a long list of very diverse questions. Really appreciate your feedback and all of the comments that we received. While I wasn't able to read all of the comments out loud, we are capturing all of those to be part of the feedback. So thank you so much for providing your comments. I'll quickly walk through the next steps on the project. So we are wrapping up our stakeholder engagement. As Happy and Gordon mentioned at the beginning of the call, it's been a year-long effort with 3 public workshops, and this is the final one. So we will be wrapping up the concept plan this summer. We will take the feedback we received this evening, as well as all of the feedback that we receive on the online survey over the next month. This fall, we will be starting in on 30% plans for phase 1, which will include all of block 2. Between 2022 and 2023, we will complete all of the construction documents for the final design of phase 1, which is the block 2 area closest to the DNF tower. Construction on phase 1 will start in 2024. I already mentioned we have an online survey that will follow this workshop. Please do help us to spread the word. The public comment period is not over, and we'd love to hear from you. So you'll see the link to the Survey Monkey at the top here. We recognize that not everyone has reliable access to the internet, and if your community or others may request paper surveys, Laura Morales on our Parks team will be distributing and collecting paper surveys, and she would be happy to drop off surveys for you. So her email address is provided. Please also watch for updates at www.denvergov.org/theoutdoordowntown. We'll be posting the workshop summary, the recording from tonight, the survey, and all of the upcoming material on the project there. And a quick plug for the Civic Center project. Skyline's not the only exciting project happening downtown. You can also find more information about the Civic Center Next 100 project. We have an online survey that will be closing this Monday, so please check out that website. And stay tuned. We'll be sharing the final concept plan digitally later this summer based on the feedback that we received. As always, please email us with questions, and the email address provided is the best way to reach us. So thank you again for being with us, and thank you so much for all of your time and input over the last year.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Everyone.
Thanks so much.